Hi, I'm Pete, and welcome to Just a Few Acres Farm. Today we're going to take a look at our new calves because we have a whole bunch, and I'm going to spend some time talking about common Dexter genetic conditions. These include chondrodysplasia or dwarfism, PHA, which is a genetic lung disease, the genetics of A2 milk, and the genetic origins of polled and white Dexters. So stay tuned. We have 9 new calves so far, and we're expecting 12, so we're about 3/4 of the way there. And the calves this year are looking great. We had another surprise red or dun calf this year. We're not sure which it is yet. And it came again out of a black cow, but this time the cow was bred to our red bull, Orden. One of the great things about Dexter genetics is we really don't have to worry about too much about calving because we show up in the morning and the calves are usually there. This year we've only seen one cow actually having birth. The calves just pop up like they're coming out of the ground. The only issue we've had out of these 9 calves is the one that I talked about before, where we had problems with the mom and the calf bonding, and we had to sequester them in a pen in the barn to get them to bond. Otherwise, these calves have all come without any of our help. This is Patty and her calf, who's scooting away. Patty is our herd boss. Before getting into Dexter genetic conditions, let's start with a primer. I'll call it Genetics 101. When a cow forms either an egg or a sperm, its DNA splits in half, and it never splits the same way twice. So the traits that are carried in half that DNA are combined with the other half of the other parent's DNA at conception when the sperm and the egg come together. The most simple genetics consist of a trait that is the product of a pair of alleles, and one allele is dominant and one is recessive. So you see the dominant trait expressed in the cow, but not the recessive one. It remains hidden. Common traits that function this way are eye color, coat color, and polled or horned. So when we're talking about a pair of alleles, we're getting one from the mother and one from the father. Remember, their DNA split, and they're sending one trait each to that pair of alleles that are expressed in the calf. So with that basic knowledge, we can move on to discuss common Dexter genetic conditions. Oh, and there's one other important thing. It's really easy to get genetic testing done. All we do is pull tail hairs from the cattle, and the hair has to come out by the roots. You can't cut the hair because the DNA information is in the bulb at the root of the hair. We package up those tail hair samples, send them off to the University of California at Davis, and they can run a whole gamut of genetic tests based on what you're looking for. We do it as part of registration with the ADCA, the American Dexter Cattle Association, but you don't have to be a member to have testing done there. Chondrodysplasia or dwarfism, or chondro for short, pardon my pun, is the most common Dexter genetic condition. And the reason for this is, in the early origins of the herd, back in Ireland in the 1800s, the Dexter breed was developed by selecting the smallest of animals and breeding them together. So it concentrated dwarfism genetics within the breed, and they still remain to this day. In fact, if you read the original breed description for Dexters, which I had in my History of Dexter Cattle video, and I'll put it up here so you can take a look at it, it actually describes an animal with dwarfism. Big body, short legs. That's it in summary. Dexters with chondro can lead long, happy lives, and there's a genetic test for it if you want to find out whether it's in your herd or not. Chondrodysplasia is a simple genetic condition that's expressed through 2 alleles. Remember, back to my Genetics 101. And the allele that causes chondrodysplasia is dominant. So say you breed a cow that exhibits chondrodysplasia to a bull which is normal and doesn't have chondrodysplasia. The cow that you are breeding with has one dominant chondrodysplasia allele and one recessive normal allele. The bull has 2 normal alleles. So if I put a grid up here and show you all the possible cases of that breeding, 75% of the calves from that breeding will be chondrodysplasia exhibiting calves, and 25% will be normal calves. Where we can get into trouble with chondrodysplasia is if a calf gets a double dose of it. So if you breed a cow and a bull that both exhibit chondrodysplasia, you run a good chance of having what's called a bulldog calf. And that calf is born dead if it's even carried to full term at all. And it exhibits really strange traits. It has a bloated, misshapen body, really short, stubby legs, and a squashed head, kind of like a bulldog. That's where it gets its name from. If you go ahead and take that chance and breed 2 chondro animals, and I'll put that same grid up here, you run a 25% chance of getting a bulldog dead calf. You run a 50% chance of getting a quote normal chondrodysplasia calf or a dwarf calf, and you run a 25% chance of getting a completely normal sized calf. So the lesson to be learned here is if you want a chondro or dwarf Dexter herd, don't breed chondro carriers to chondro carriers. Breed normal animals to chondro carriers. That way you have a 75% chance of getting a dwarf calf and a 25% chance of getting a normal calf with no chance of getting bulldog calves. We don't have any chondro carriers in our herd. We want to grow our animals larger for beef production, so we've bred that out. Okay, now on to PHA, which when you break it down is a mouthful. It's pulmonary, hypoplasia, anasarca. And when translated, that means underdeveloped lungs full of fluid. PHA is a genetic condition, so a calf can inherit it from its parents. Now, since PHA is caused by a recessive gene, if you breed 2 carriers together, you have a 25% chance of that calf inheriting a double recessive lethal dose of that gene, and then you have a born dead calf. The good thing about PHA is, number 1, it's recessive, and number 2, there's a genetic test for it. So all you need to do is test one of your breeding pairs for PHA, and then you know you're not going to have a problem with it. So in our case, both of our bulls have been tested for PHA, and they're both non-carriers, so we know we're not going to have any calves exhibiting it in our herd. Now on to probably the most controversial subject of this whole video, and that's A2A2 milk. You may have heard of A2A2 milk. It gets touted as a remedy for all sorts of things. So a short primer on A2A2. 30% of the protein in milk comes from beta-casein. Beta-casein is a long amino acid chain, and the difference between A1 and A2 beta-casein is one particular amino acid along the chain. I think it's number 67. A1 milk has a particular chain, and then A2 has this one difference along the long chain. So we have these 2 proteins, A1 and A2, and I'm really simplifying this because actually there's subgroups of proteins within both A1 and A2. But if you have genetic testing done on your herd and you find out whether your cows are carrying A1 double dose, A1A2, or A2A2, then you can determine what proteins they're going to have in their milk production. And A2A2 cows are the cows whose milk is highly prized to cure the aforementioned conditions, which include, and this is not a comprehensive list of the claims, curing type 1 diabetes, alleviating heart disease, curing autism, and curing schizophrenia. I have no idea if A2A2 milk helps these conditions or not. My opinion is if you drink it and it helps you, good for you. There haven't been any double-blind, large population medical tests, so it's kind of like CBD oil where people make all kinds of claims, but there isn't hard scientific evidence. The claim that I have heard that makes the most sense to me, because there's just a lot of historical fact around it, is that the people who benefit from A2A2 milk are lactose intolerant people, and lactose intolerant people lack a particular enzyme to digest a protein in that A1 milk. So the scenario goes that as humans evolved alongside cattle, the early strains of cattle, which included Dexters, only produced A2 milk. A1 milk came along with later hybridization of dairy cattle into these super huge breeds like Holsteins, and so a certain percentage of the population can't properly digest that newer A1 carrying milk. It's interesting that when I started this video they were all up and eating, but now they're all laying down and digesting, chewing their cud. The last part of this video is a little discussion about polled Dexters and white Dexters. Now, neither polled Dexters and white Dexters are full-blood Dexters because that trait was brought into the breed by outcrossing it with a completely different breed. And for those that are newbies to cattle, a polled cattle is one that never grows horns. So we have horned cattle and we have polled cattle. Both traits of being polled and being white are dominant traits. So it only took one outcrossing to a bull to bring those traits into the Dexter herd. For the case of polled Dexters, it was done with an outcrossing with a Celtic Angus bull. And in the case of white Dexters, it was created by outcrossing with white Park bull. Once the initial outcrossing happened, those traits could be brought into full expression for every calf that's born by concentrating selective breeding between animals that both exhibited the polled or white characteristics. Isn't genetics fascinating? You just have to learn a few simple rules and then you can run through all the different cases for the genetics you have in your herd. I hope you learned something from this video. I know I learned a lot preparing for it. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.